Just about an hour from now, I want to continue our conversation with Greg Hampikian, a DNA expert, a professor of biology and criminal justice at Boise State University, also chief of the Idaho branch of the Innocence Project, friend of the Knoxes, consulted with regard to some of this forensic evidence with the Knox family. And before we continue the conversation we had before the break, you just got a text from Amanda Knox's stepfather.
Yeah, saying that same thing that we're hearing is that there's movement and time to get into the courtroom, so everybody's on tenterhooks. It's up to the jury and the judges at this point.
The 6 and 2. I did want to ask, and we were talking about this earlier, and I think our viewers would find this fascinating, is that, obviously this is happening in Perugia, Italy. It's an Italian courtroom. They're all speaking Italian. We heard Amanda speaking fluent Italian this morning. But the Knox family, they don't speak Italian.
No.
They're sitting in that courtroom watching essentially the fate of their daughter and not comprehending what's happening. No,
there's some volunteers who help from time to time trying to translate, but you can imagine what happens in a courtroom if you have somebody whispering next to you the whole time, and I'm sure the judge wants them to keep that down, and sometimes there's no one with them translating, and they just have to try to figure it out best they can.
How do they do that?
I think it's just very difficult. It's always hard when you have a foreigner in a courtroom. That's their family is left out.
Let's go back to the DNA evidence. We're talking about the kitchen knife and the bra clasp.
Right.
And on appeal, this judge, it was up to the judge who said, before we continue on, I want to have independent forensic experts take a closer look at these two pieces of evidence. And what did those experts find?
Well, they said everything we had said, that I had said 2.5 years ago, and that the defense experts, the Italian defense experts, had said even earlier at trial that the DNA on the knife is most likely contamination, that it's unreliable, it should not have even been reported, it's below the standard level that we look at. And we set those standards for a really good reason. If you look below those levels, you're going to see contamination. You'll see it in your chemicals in the laboratory. You'll see it that you carry, family members' DNA to work with you. You'll get all kinds of contamination. And that's why, one of the reasons why we have to all validate what level we can look at. The Italians started at about where the FBI and my lab and others use a reasonable cutoff. But on that knife, they went lower and lower and lower until they found something.
But if I'm the Kircher family and I'm thinking, well, then how did Amanda Knox's DNA get on this knife? And how did Raffaele Solecito's DNA get on that bra clasp? I mean, is it just that simple as...
Yeah, I mean, if we
shook hands.
Yeah, so we do that, right?
We
and
shake
then
hands.
I can touch my tie.
And then my DNA.
I go home and, your DNA's on my tie. It looks like, we were a little closer than we are.
Yeah.
and that happens. And you have to think about it. We touched some of your cells get off on my hand. Those are loose cells. And if I've just washed my hands, maybe my hands have less loose cells, and so I can transfer DNA. And that's one of the reasons, again, that we don't look at every single cell of DNA. In the laboratory, we have to validate what level we can look at. In my laboratory, we set it actually even a little lower than the FBI. But pretty much there's international agreement that you don't go below a certain level. They did in this case.
So beyond no doubt with regard to your forensic expertise that you say she is not connected.
Oh, yeah, there's no physical evidence connecting her, and for Raffaele, it's this bra clasp, but they find 46 days later. It's been moved all over the floor. In court, during the appeal, they show this video where they're handing it from one investigator to another. Their gloves are dirty. And we replicated this in my lab just by not changing our gloves, every other piece of evidence, and we've shown that you do contaminate things. You will transfer from one object to another unless you're changing gloves in between each piece of evidence.
I have a quick favor to ask you live on TV, and that is